Thank you for joining us. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. We are recording today's webinar and we'll share the video along with the slide deck so you can go back and reference anything or share this with any colleagues that might not have been able to make it today. Also, no need to take copious notes again because we are sharing this with you tomorrow. Please also note that closed captioning is available at the bottom of the screen in the toolbar if you need it. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Howard Levine. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Guest Services at State Theater, New Jersey, located in New Brunswick. I am also a member of ArtPride's Jersey Arts Marketing Leadership Team. A little description about me. I'm a middle-aged white male with graying hair wearing a blue shirt. I'm coming to you today from my office in Hightstown, New Jersey, the ancestral homeland of the Lenape people. Today, we're welcoming Eric Nelson from TRG Arts in just a moment. He'll be discussing today's main topic regarding COVID-era customer trends. We will also be joined later in the webinar by Jim Atkinson from ArtPride, New Jersey, to hear about current and upcoming arts marketing plans for the field. A little housekeeping. Again, closed captioning is available by clicking below. If you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A below and we'll address them with our speakers today as we go. Please be sure to use the Q&A instead of the chat. We are, again, recording today's webinar and we'll share the video alongside the slide deck with you probably by tomorrow. Now, I'm very happy to introduce Eric Nelson. Eric is a Client Engagement Officer at TRG Arts. As part of TRG Arts, Eric partners with performing and visual arts organizations of all shapes and sizes to grow patron participation, revenue, and community impact. Prior to joining TRG, Eric was Director of Marketing and Communications for New York City's Kaufman Music Center. He was also Vice President of Client Services, New Business, and Marketing for DCM, specializing in marketing and fundraising strategies for nonprofit organizations. Eric started his career in the arts leading marketing efforts for Paul Taylor Dance Company. I am very proud to welcome Eric.
Thank you, Howard. It's such a pleasure to be here. And Jim, thank you for inviting me and everyone at ArtPride New Jersey. Really appreciate getting to speak with you all today. So just a little bit about me. I'm a middle-aged white man with a shaved head, and I'm wearing a plaid shirt today. And I'm joining you from Stockbridge, Massachusetts, on the ancestral lands of the Mohican people. So I offer honor and respect to those people. And we are here today to talk about COVID-era data trends, wondering, are we bouncing back? And are we recession-proof ready as our economy continues to make changes and we see some red flags on the horizon? Are we prepared as organizations and as a sector? So I always like to start these presentations with an interesting data point, both because TRG and myself are huge data geeks, but it also helps to set the table for the moment that we're at. So I've been sort of taken with this image of our friend the couch here over the last couple of months because of this data point that Colleen Dillon Schneider shared from her really wonderful website, Know Your Own Bone. Some of you may have seen this, but Colleen has been tracking the choice that folks would make in the US on a weekend regarding, should we go out or should I stay home and essentially be on my couch instead of going out and having an entertainment experience or whatnot. And this is a 10-year trend that she's been looking at. So on this chart, we see from 2011 all the way up to 2021. And you see two lines here. The orange line is the US composite, and the blue line here is people who have a propensity for going out to the arts. And you see over time, that orange and blue line, the choice or the more likelihood that people would make the choice of staying at home versus wanting to go out. So, huge growth over that period of time, and especially since the pandemic. So not only is our competition, other organizations in our market, but it's also the couch as well. So as we bounce back, it's important to be mindful of our complete landscape that we're competing against. And the question is, are we bouncing back? And we're going to use some data to look at that. So if you're learning about TRG for the first time, or you may have worked with us before, but we are a data-driven consulting firm. We help arts organizations grow engagement from patrons and grow related revenue. And we wear that data geek hat firmly and proudly on our heads. And early on in the pandemic, we started a benchmarking tool with the sector to help track the impact of COVID on ticket sales and donations. To figure out what is that done to our budgets, to our databases, and it's morphed into a way to understand how to apply the trends to build better comebacks and fuel our next step strategies. So a couple of data points we're going to share are fueled by this. There's about 400 organizations participating in the benchmark. It's free, anyone can join. So it's data US, Canada, UK, and Ireland. For today, we're going to look at some North America data that represents about 140 arts organizations performing arts, and you see the distribution here of which genres they're representing. So from theaters all the way down to operas. So the percent is the percent of theaters or operas or orchestras that make up the proportion of organizations participating in the data that I'm about to share. So are we bouncing back? What's going on? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? What does that look like? And I've been tracking this data on a monthly basis since the pandemic started. And about, in the last year or so, we've started looking at it from a 12-month comparison point versus where we've just been versus 12 months pre-pandemic. So in this data point, we're looking at September of 2021 through August of 2022, so the month we just finished, versus that same period of time, but September of 2018 through August of 2019. So the last 12 months we've been in versus pre-pandemic. And this is tickets sold in North America from those 140 organizations. And revenue is still down comparatively 25%, and number of tickets sold, units, down 32%. This is actually good news. As you heard me say, I've been tracking this on a monthly basis, and we've gotten closer and closer to pre-pandemic levels every month, which is good news. It may not feel that way all the time, but we're definitely getting there. And actually, for this presentation, I thought, let's look at this even in the last 6 months of where we've been versus that same pre-pandemic period of time. So this is March through August of those year splits. And if you just look at the last 6 months, revenue ticket sales wise, only down 10%, units down 21%. So we're seeing perhaps higher tickets, people buying higher ticket prices. That's why the revenue is closer versus the number of units. And this same data broken out month by month. So the green bar here is 18-19, blue bar here is 21-22 dollars. The lines here, same thing, lighter green is 18-19, purple is 21-22, and the number of units. But look how since March, we haven't surpassed any particular month, but we've gotten so close on many occasions. So I call these the spoonfuls of confidence to say, hey, look, we are indeed getting closer to where we were pre-pandemic. So really exciting stuff to see some wind get into our sails that way. And since our organizations rely on not just ticketing dollars, but also contributed dollars to get there, also wanted to share these same data points, periods of time on the fundraising side of things. So this is that same 12-month comparison, and we're looking at donations this time. So that 12 months revenue down only 3%, units down only 10%. This at some months have actually been higher than pre-pandemic amounts. What's super fascinating and interesting is the last 6 months on the donation side, we've actually seen us go backwards. We're less strong than we were in the towards the end about a year ago at this point. So revenue in the last 6 months now is down 29% from pre-pandemic levels, units down 13%. And then when we look at this month by month comparison, you really see here since January, and in particular the last 6 months, we have been behind every month donation wise from pre-pandemic levels, when around this time last year, look at last September, October, last November, last December, we were tracking ahead. So an interesting question would be, A, is this something you're noticing in your own shops? And two, what kind of strategies are you all collectively as an organization thinking about on the fundraising side? And if you aren't having those conversations, one recommendation would be to start looking at this data internally and seeing, hey, last 12 months looks strong, but really what's been happening in the last few months, and are we ready and prepared there? So start this dialogue internally. Okay, so laying a foundation, seeing where we are in terms of our recovery from a revenue perspective. Are we also ready for perhaps this next wrecking ball of a potential recession coming our way? Are we prepared and protected? So we're going to talk about some things we're noticing in terms of strategies and data to give you some inspirations to think about. And one is tracking consumer confidence. Are there ways to get our finger on the pulse of consumer confidence and understand if people are prepared and ready? And two data points we look at is average ticket price and average gift amount. So these are easy stats that you can track on an ongoing basis to see, hey, are we up ahead? Are we behind? Are we getting a story being, clarified to us by how patrons are acting? And one really interesting thing, because a question we get asked a lot at TRG is, with what's going on with gas prices and inflation and the stock market and the impending recession, are we seeing, do we need to lower prices? Do we need to be more price sensitive at this moment in time? Are people, showing up in terms of their purchase patterns, and are they exhibiting price sensitivity? And so far we have not seen this. So this chart shows average ticket price, that same comparative period of time, 2021, 2022, from September to August, 18-19 September to August. The last 12 months we've been in is the green here on the top. The blue is 18-19 pre-pandemic, and pretty consistently over the last 12 months, our average ticket prices, what people are paying, not what we're listing as our prices, what people are paying has actually been higher than pre-pandemic amounts. So we aren't seeing yet a softening in this price yet. Now, when we looked at this back to what happened during 2007, 2008, when the economy crashed then, it actually took from the fall to almost that next summer before we started seeing prices soften. So, that 6 or 8 months lag time, we have some historical reference about that. So that's an area to think about as you watch or track this data, and that trends up or down. So you just take the number of tickets sold by the number of the dollars for that period of time, and you get your average ticket price. Interesting on the donation side, so same data points, same period of time, and we're looking at two different ones here. But we have 21-22 in donations, average donation amounts in this purple line. And the blue line here is 18-19. So pretty consistently, as we saw that other chart, average gift amounts have been down versus pre-pandemic amounts, sort of since February, January of this year. So that'd be an interesting data point to dig in at your organizations to think, where is that happening? What segments are holding back or not coming back with the same verve that we thought, and try to understand why and where that's happening. Isolating that by segment can help determine perhaps where some of the pain points are. Is it smaller gifts? Is it larger gifts? Things of that nature. So I have this running theme that you'll see, which I'm calling Starting Monday. These are some ideas and tactics that you can bring right back into your organizations after the webinar is over, and might be inspired to try as the new week begins. But one is we call them maximizing the hotcakes, and two is spotlighting urgency. So one thing that we are noticing across the board is probably not a surprise, you all live in this information on a day-to-day basis. The more well-known, higher profile name product lines are still selling the best. I think there's a risk aversion that our patrons are having at this moment in time. So they're gravitating towards the more well-known product lines. And those are selling well. Many of them are exceeding goals, which is great. And here's an example here. So we would call those the hot cakes. So Charleston Symphony, one of our clients, they recently did Beethoven's Ninth. And so two things you see here on this chart. The orange line is the pace they had projected for themselves of how tickets and revenue would come in on a week-to-week basis from the start of the selling cycle till the show actually happened. The blue line showed what took place. So you see here, out of the box, this concert sold faster and stronger than they had even anticipated, which was based on using historical data to set these goals. So we said to them a couple of things as we were partnering together. Hey, you're having so much early interest here. Let's actually add more to that marketing budget, because we see this over time. If shows are selling well, that's a fuel for you as an organization. So invest more in that. And two, there are rare situations when you have enough demand to get demand-based pricing going and going early, but you're out of the box so fast with sales. So you're seeing that demand. So don't wait. Employ some demand-based pricing strategies early. And you can see here in the blue line, as time went by, there wasn't softening in interest here. It just continued to grow. So this, at the end of the day, this concert ended up exceeding revenue by $30,000, 1,600 units were sold. So that added marketing expense budget, adding that extra 10,000 to the mix using demand-based pricing early, helped to grow that even more than they had anticipated.
Eric?
Yeah.
So we do have a few questions that have come in. One is pertinent to the slide you're showing right now. Somebody's asking, when did the infusion of the marketing expense happen for this?
Yeah, and you see right where there's this little lift here early on was this growth trajectory happened as that. So it was early in the cycle, just because we saw this blue so fast out of the gate. So it was an early decision that was made.
Thank you. And a couple slides back, I don't know if you need to go back, or we may want to talk about this at the end.
Yeah.
Someone asked what revenue trends are you seeing around visual arts? There's someone here that's working in an art gallery and as an art consultant. And have there been any studies, or how does this data apply to the visual arts field as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll bring this up. So the data set we're looking at is exclusive to performing arts, but I think there are things you could take away from that, which is, actually this is probably pertinent to what's going on here in Charleston, is that we're sort of noticing there's both this data set and then the client work that we do that goes a little farther than what this data setting includes, is we're seeing, again, sort of bigger name things that have, high recognition. That's where patrons seem to be willing to risk and sign up, show up, both performance-wise and visual arts-wise. So that's a really interesting takeaway, that piece of the puzzle there. And two is, trying to then think about what's the right match to get people to come back for a second time. And we'll talk a little bit about retention there. But we are also noticing that folks, especially new people, getting them back for that second or third experience, it's still some of that more well-known, again, lower risk stuff that is seeming to resonate more. And that there's actually an interesting study that Culture Track just came out recently. They were looking at actually older patrons, baby boomers and whatnot, and what they want. And one of the takeaways from that study was, which kind of foots with what we're seeing in the data, is people want escapism. Still, they're still coming out of what's happened as a result of the pandemic, and they want high entertainment. They want to relax. They want to they want to laugh and have a good time. That's high on their priority list of what they're looking for. So highly recommend checking out that Culture Track study. We can send it as a follow-up with the slide deck, so you can take a look at that as well. That was done by LaPlaca, Cohen, and Slover. So good stuff in that as well. Okay, so but we'll get to some. This also pertains to it. Something to also think about is when we look at what's working, the organizations who are on track with hitting their revenue targets, it's marketing materials that reinforce some of the basics that you all know so well. Play up urgency. If there's anything that you can add into your marketing materials that talk about, getting something, special access, seat availability, meeting with artists, deadline driven things and urgency driven things are more important than ever before. So you see things in some of this marketing materials: early bird pricing, renew by, we miss you, thank you, come back. You might notice that we've made things more flexible, deadlines. So some of these best practices that you've done as marketing folks are really resonating in as patrons come back. They sort of need that push to be motivated. So urgency statements and urgency deadline driven things, super important to ensure that you're weaving into your marketing materials. Some other things here is typology. So who's coming back? What does our segmentation of buyers look like? So I'm going to pull all of this up here, but we started using this customer segmentation structure, not by revenue stream, single ticket buyers or subscribers, but rather about RFMG, recency, frequency, monetary investment, growth over time. So single ticket categorization is important and subscription is also important. But if we were to meld that all together, we might think of segmentation this way: acquisition, first timers, new customers; once before, people who've been with us at least once in the last 18 months and now are coming back for a second experience; convertees, people who've been with us twice before, once in the last 18 months and they're coming back to have that next relationship; active patrons, people who've been with us 3 to 9 times in their history and at least once in the last 18 months; super actives, these are your, the people you would probably all recognize in your venues or gallery spaces. But these are people who've come 10 plus times in their history and at least once in the last 18 months. So think about, you have this acquisition, first timers, these current customers at different phases of growth with you all. And then the re-engaged people, stale, last attendance was 18 to 36 months ago; lapsed people who haven't been in 3 years or more. Different ways to look at the categorization within your database so you can target them differently because they're all at different phases with our growth trajectory with you all. So who's been coming back? So when we look at the same categorization through all of 2022 so far through September 15th, that's when I pulled this data last. So January 1 of 2022 versus September 15th. This is the proportion of ticket sales by those different categories. So this big green here, almost 50% is new folks. This blue here at 8% is once befores. This lighter green, sort of acidy green at 4% convertees. Active folks, those three or more, 11%. These, folks are getting up to 10 pluses. The super actives here at 17. Stale, 4% of our ticket buyers, and lapsed folks here in this darker green at 8%. So lots, interesting to see how much proportionally of this data we're looking at is coming in from new buyers. And is that different than what we've seen before? Is it bigger? So pulling that same data, this is for all of 2019, a different picture. So same categories, and I'll just toggle back and forth so you can see the growth here, but two big significant differences. So 2019 here, look, 30% from new buyers, 34% from super actives, 15% from our actives. But then we go back to what we're experiencing this year, the proportion is so much larger of brand new people, and we're seeing less of our actives and super actives making up the proportion of our database. So some of those folks who traditionally would have come back, they're still not ready yet. And we think some of that could be because our traditional buyers tend to be older. And when we look at the data, some of our older audiences are still apprehensive about coming back. Even though you all have put safety measures in place and all of those good things, people are still holding back a bit. Where we're seeing in the data, a lot of the younger buyers are generationally younger. Millennials, Gen Xers are making up a good proportion of that. So I'll toggle back here a couple more times because it's really interesting to see this difference here. And why it's important is this. So I'm going to share here some cost of sale analysis. So when you have a new ticket buyer come into your organization, this is a case study that we've tracked over the years and keep updating, and it stays pretty consistent over the years. But a single ticket buyer brings in about $54 annually to an organization, has a cost of sale about 20 cents on the dollar to bring them in, renewal rate about 23%, those people will come back. If you get them to become a subscriber, so a new subscriber, their patron yield goes up, so they're bringing in more revenue to the organization, but the cost of sale is actually more. So it costs a lot to get a new person in, and then getting them to upgrade and get into a loyalty path with you takes even more, both resources, person power wise and dollar wise. Their renewal rate goes up to 46%. Renewing subscribers yields go up. That cost of sale goes down significantly. You only have to spend 3 cents on the dollar to get them to come back. And if you get them to add on a donation, both does the cost of sale stay low, but the renewal rate also goes up. So the reason I bring this up is if we look back at that proportionality, most of our database is now made up of folks who are in these first two categories. So in order to get them to come and come back, what does that mean? We need a larger marketing budget because we're in a phase of growth or re-engagement, and that requires more communications, more follow-up, more variety in communications. So it's an interesting conversation to have internally. I know it's super hard. We have tighter budgets at this moment in time. We have less resources, but yet if we don't resource ourselves effectively, it's going to be harder and harder to grow back. So how do we have those really tough discussions internally to say, hey, marketing needs some investment here at this time in order to see this growth happen? So interesting slide if you don't have these conversations happening internally, or if you all aren't looking at it from this perspective, you can use this slide absolutely to try to make this case and continue to have this conversation holistically at your organizations. So something to do that starting Monday, invest in growth and retention. And it's an interesting thing to look at your marketing plans. When you're in these earlier growth phases, you need more communications, more follow-up. Think of cultivating a relationship. You need to get someone to want to go out with you on a second or third date, you need the chocolate and the flowers and the follow-ups to say what a great time it was. We still need to do that with our patrons as well. Because even with doing that, all that investment and getting those people to come back, with even all those resources, 65% of new single ticket buyer audiences are new. So we're seeing that absolutely in this moment that we're at. But a lot of those people don't come back. So we need to keep that pipeline full. 73% of new ticket buyers never return again. So we have a lot of churn with those folks. And what those causes are typically experiential problems. So it's rarely what's happening on stage or on gallery walls that makes people not want to come back. It's things like parking was challenging, or I didn't know where to get into the venue, or I didn't know how to show up, or I didn't know why it took so long for my tickets to arrive after I purchased them, all kinds of experiential things, or I felt I didn't understand the lay of the land at the venue. So we need to ask our patrons, how was that first experience? And and when we do ask them, we need to listen to say, oh, we heard you. That was difficult. You didn't know the layout of the venue. So we're going to make sure everyone now they can go to our website to see venue maps, so they can not only see what the seats are like, but what the rest of the venue looks like. And or we maybe listened, but we didn't follow up to let them know how their feedback was really helpful and what changes we made as a result of that. Or it was the wrong invitation. So they came in the door and we then wanted them to know everything about them. So they came to one concert or one exhibition, and we let them know in the next email they got that they could subscribe or become members or donate or join a million different things that we can do, which is great on one level, helping them learn everything we do. But it's also overwhelming at the same time. They feel that's too much. We see it in the data all the time. So our follow-ups need to be purposeful and targeted. We can't expect to instant pot the relationship. So we want to think about what's the right appeal, and very clear and targeted as opposed to overwhelming, and make sure we're product-wise, doing a right kind of matchmake there at the same time. So a couple things to think about when you want to reduce churn. First timer attendees, the main goal is just to get them to have another experience with us, either in our halls or in our galleries. So try not to overwhelm them with all that other stuff. Gather feedback, ask how their experience was, address those problems, and then the invitation to come back must both be immediate and, from our experience, have a quick deadline turnaround time to get them to come back. Okay, so all of that in mind, and so a lot of these are best practices you've heard before, but reinforcing the need for them, is we need to create new habits again for our patrons. As you heard me say, I love a data point. And as the pandemic has unfolded, I've been taken with this particular one, which is that it takes 21 days to create a habit, but it also takes 21 days to break a habit. So the pandemic has gone on, so much longer than 21 days. So many of our patrons, as much as they like coming, they've kind of gotten out of the habit of going. So they look to us to remind us this thing that they should do, that they want to get back to. I've actually heard in some, from some of our clients in the research survey data that they've done, they've gotten feedback from patrons who were encouraged to come back with phrases like, I forgot how much I loved coming to the theater, or I forgot how much I loved that piece of music, or I forgot how much I love to look at art. So we need to remind them to do these things. So starting Monday is to think about not just selling that particular concert or that particular play or that particular opera or that particular ballet or that particular exhibition on our gallery walls, but also sell the experience of going, of coming back. And at the same time, trying to lean into word of mouth. We're seeing this in the data as well, is that more and more patrons, customers, they want to hear from their friends, families, neighbors, what they're doing and what they're enjoying, and they're using that as their cue to think about what they want to do. So I don't know if any of you saw this great campaign that the Broadway world did called This is Broadway. It's you can Google it, put it, there's a YouTube clip of essentially a commercial that the Broadway League started or created that they put out recently, actually earlier this year, to encourage, earlier this season, to encourage people to come back to not just Broadway shows in New York, but Broadway shows in all of these different markets where they tour around. And it's an exciting, energetic video that just reignites our love of going to the theater. And it doesn't hurt that it's narrated by Oprah, but it's the kind of thing that gets those habits and reminds people, oh, right, you love doing this. Let's get back to doing it again. So thinking about campaigns you could do either as your own organization or even partners in your market. That's one of the great things about an organization like ArtPride here, is that, being all in New Jersey together is their collaboration. You may have been doing some of these things already. Can you build on them even further? So this is the word of mouth thing. So even as you try to excite them, also, think about this power of word of mouth in getting folks to want to come back in these ways. So one thing we've seen some clients do, which has been really interesting, is as folks come back to shows during the stage pitch, either the artistic director, executive director, or whoever's up there doing that, this is going to feel counterintuitive, but says to the audience, hey, everybody, I'm going to give you one moment that you can have your phone on during this show and take a picture before we start, not of the stage, but actually of everybody else in the theater together, and post that on your social media channels. So you can help or ask your patrons to get the word out about the excitement of going back. And then of course you want them to turn their phones off after they take that picture, but it's a great way to help get another visual cue out there to their friends and family. Some of you may have seen this as another strategy to try on September 3rd. So this is from an adjacent industry, the film world, but there was National Cinema Day. So on September 3rd, you could go to any movie for just $3. So they were, similar, trying to get people off that couch and back into the movie theater venues. They used price as a way to encourage coming back. And interesting to look at the results of the data that they sold 24, so this in the US, 24.3 million tickets on that day, which was an increase of 9% from that corresponding day from the previous week. So it did drive more people to get off that couch and take that action. It'll be interesting to further track this data and learn, did that lead to further follow-up attendance from these folks? Was Cinema Day? I actually was not able to attend a movie that day. Would have been interesting to see if I did, how my movie theater or the movie sector encouraged me to come back. And if we did something similar in the arts, not only would we be prepared to have a day like this, and or what would then the follow-up campaign be to get folks to come back? Because we don't want to drive just price driving down to get people to come, but it is an interesting tactic, and how we would invite those people to come back for their second, third, fourth experience is sort of the sweet spot here to think about. So all that being said, all of this, the data you heard me say is free to join. So I'm up here on the screen, you see some information, URL here, trgarts.com/benchmark. If you go to that site, actually, I think I'll even put it in the chat here. If you're interested in signing up for it, I will give everybody access if I can. Actually, I'll put it in, send it off in the follow-up. But go to trgarts.com benchmark. You can sign up for it, join that 143 group of organizations. And in addition to joining, you get a dashboard so you can start looking at your data on an ongoing basis. So with that in mind, I'm going to click here just a couple more times. You'll get my contact information as a follow-up. So if you have further questions about the data or want to dig into things further, let me know. We also at TRG have been doing these hours of free consulting. So if you want to sign up for a free hour just to puzzle through things, I am more than happy to do that. So just email me and we can find and schedule a time. And you'll get that contact information with the deck as a follow-up. And I will turn it over, open it up to see if there are questions from the group and continue the discussion.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was incredibly informative. I'll say I've been a client of TRG's in the past. I participated I am participating in the benchmark study with Purple 7, and have attended many webinars given by you and TRG over the years. It's the insights that you guys bring to us continue to challenge and encourage us to look at data and always become more patron focused. So always appreciate that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There have been a few questions that have come in. One of them is around COVID policies. Have you seen trends in terms of masking or health and safety as theaters begin to relax some of their health and safety policies that in some ways are continuing to impact sales? Or
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a really good question and an evolving one at the same time, both questions and what people are doing in that, because what we do see in the data and are hearing is, this isn't going to be a surprise to anybody, but people are overhearing about COVID. Like nobody wants to see that word or talk about it or whatnot. But at the same time, what we see is real confidence from patrons. Audience monitor, the audience outlook monitor that Wolf Brown looks at shows this off a lot, is the feeling of confidence that patrons have with what steps you all have taken. But getting to this moment about the mask, I think there's a really interesting something that's happening, because there sort of seem to be, there's the people who are ready to come back, they don't want the masks anymore. And then there are these people, especially when we think about our super actives and the folks who we would have expected to have come back who haven't yet, is still some fear and trepidation around that. So I don't know if anyone saw the data or have seen this case study around the Kite Runner on Broadway. So Broadway relaxed their mask requirements, and the Kite Runner is actually doing some nights of the run, I think Wednesday's one of them, that's a mask day. So like finding ways to say, I know not all of you have runs, but if you have a run of a show, can some of the days have a mask, be mask requirement, and some not? We've also heard of some organizations creating sections in the venue that, oh, this is, if you want to wear a mask, you can, and feel more confident because others around you are doing that, then this is the mask section to sit in, and making sure that's not sitting all the way in the back. It makes, we need to be equitable with our patrons around all of that and access points. So some of those strategies are new, so it'll be interesting to watch. And I think in particular, if you follow the Broadway League's email blast, there's a called Broadway Brief. They follow a lot of this stuff. In particular, they've been reporting about what the kite runner has been doing. So it's an interesting data point to follow.
Thank you. Another question is, you showed the two graphs where the percentage of frequent patrons has gone down, and it tends to be newer patrons that are returning right now. A question I have for you is, has there been any research into whether those past frequent patrons are even still around? I know anecdotally, when we've sent mailings and run NCOA, we've seen a great many people that have left our area that used to be frequent patrons. And have you done any studies to see if there is an impact of people moving during COVID or, leaving areas?
Yeah, it's a good point. We don't have a specific study on it, except for we have clients who are so we have clients all over, but it's interesting to watch the ones in rural areas or non-urban areas that have seen a huge influx of new folks. So in those instances, what we've been working on them with is, and you can do this in any market, but ensuring that you're getting the new movers list from the post office. That's a thing. If you're not aware of that, that's absolutely a list you can get. And thinking about, because these people are new to our markets, or they may have been second homeowners who became full-time homeowners in certain markets. Are we doing welcoming campaigns to them? Because we can't assume they know we exist, even though we've been around for 50 or 100 years in some cases. So this idea of the welcome packet or welcome something is a really important piece of the puzzle. Howard, I think we'll know more in the next year and a half as some of those campaigns, because they take time. People won't respond right away to those. So this is a strategy of long-term investment to raise awareness and growth there. But it's a really interesting point how many of those people, to your point, it's really good to run the NCOA and look at how's your database changed? And are you factoring that in both to your projections, and as you heard me talk a little bit about what your budgeting is? Because the days of saying, oh, hey, we're going to grow our marketing, we hope to grow marketing ticket sales by 5%, so we're going to grow the budget by 5% or 2%, whatever. It's not a bad strategy, but it's more important to look at what's the phase that your database is at, and are you investing based on, are you in a growth phase? Are you in a retention phase? Those kind of things, because we're finding not enough investment in marketing departments is holding us back from true audience growth.
And one question also came in, I think it would be good to hear from you. You mentioned many tactics around getting feedback from patrons, so also changing your messaging based on that feedback. Can you give some examples? I know, like at State Theater, we survey our patrons our attendees after every show, and we find that to be very valuable. Are there tactics like that where you can actually gather feedback, and then that would help you directly impact messaging going forward?
Yeah, so two things. One is we are big fans, I know a lot of you all do this, of the NPS survey, the Net Promoter Score. So if you aren't aware of that, it's a great thing to look up. There's a wonderful book called The Ultimate Question that describes this, but it was essentially the person, Fred Reichheld, who developed it, was given the task of finding one data point that could be used to predict organizational business success. And the question he came up with is, would you recommend this to a friend? So that's a really easy question to survey all of your patrons afterwards, rather than giving them a 15-question survey or whatnot. There's sort of a trick to it. It's not just one question, it's two, which is, if you wouldn't recommend us to a friend, why not? And that's the sweet spot there, is trying to learn where those problem points are that you might be able to learn and resolve. So that's one piece. Two is, your box office teams are such important pieces of the puzzle. You all know this so well, but trying to work with them to build in some, it doesn't have to be a lot, but a couple of questions that they could or should be asking on every call that comes into the box office. So not only are they selling tickets, but they're gathering information for the organization to have. It could be this net promoter kind of question, or what would hold you back, or you're calling for the first time. How was your experience? We see this all the time. The two reasons why dissatisfaction are caused as we survey it is parking and website. So parking is often a really hard one to solve, but website is hard in its own way, but you could gather some information, especially on first timers. How was it navigating our site? Were you able to find what you needed easier? And that some of that feedback can be really helpful to help grow. So not overwhelming, but finding two easy ways to collect that data.
Thank you. And finally, we just had a last question come in. Is there any information about marketing investments that are moving the needle right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. You saw, that piece, that example of those urgency style statements. So one thing we're seeing is frequency is still winning the day, urgency is winning the day, and those being a mix of direct mail, email, social, like not forgetting that direct mail can be a helpful tool in that. So the more that multi-channel approach is still, especially for our older patrons, though there are studies, this is super fascinating to me, that millennials, I always hate to put just categories, but in the data, millennials, they will say, find direct mail kind of unique and interesting. So there, it has like a quirky feel to it. So I don't know, let's lean into the retro there in some ways. And that, and well, because I'm a data geek, there are studies that also show that cognition is stronger when you read a physical something versus on screen. So recognition is higher, things of that nature. So.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. We always appreciate your time. Always good seeing you. And I always learn something new. Greatly appreciate you coming online and sharing your thoughts and insights with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much. And really appreciate being here. And again, you'll get this deck and contact information. And I think Jim's going to join us. So I'm going to go off camera to go into the next phase of this.
So thank you again. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Jim Atkinson from ArtPride, New Jersey.
Thanks, Howard. Good afternoon or good morning. I know we're still in morning here. And I just want to take a few minutes here at the end of the webinar to chat with you all about some things that ArtPride is doing through its Discover Jersey Arts program, which is something that we co-founded with the State Arts Council, and the State Arts Council still generously supports. But before we get into that, again, I'm Jim Atkinson, Director of Programs and Services here at ArtPride. I'm a middle-aged white male with black hair and black glasses, wearing a dark gray shirt today, and coming to you from my home office in Haddon Township, New Jersey, which is the ancestral home of the Lenni Lenape people. So again, just wanted to chat with you about just a few things that we're doing under this brand, which is the business consumer marketing brand that we manage. So we can go to the next slide there, Eric, for me. Thank you. So part of what we do is the seasonal messaging campaigns. And I want to thank Eric in advance because he segued beautifully into some of the things I'm going to chat about here. And what these campaigns tend to do is the way we market them is very much based on experience. So we do group events that you all are doing. And this is a curated grouping of events that we do around whatever that seasonal theme may be. Right now, we are doing a campaign for fall. And the way we market it is we certainly market the events themselves, but we also market experience. We're very focused on marketing experience through these campaigns. And we do that through a mix of paid organic social, digital, some traditional media, PR, email, sometimes direct mail. So we definitely put a marketing mix together for these and push out the messaging. And that general messaging, again, is very much based on experience. And then the deliverable becomes obviously the events that you all are doing around whatever that theme may be. And then we take all this and we put it on a dedicated landing page of jerseyarts.com, which obviously we push. So if we can go to the next slide there, Eric. So as I mentioned, right now we're doing fall. That runs through November 7th. And our next campaign will be winter holidays. And we're doing the theme of the holiday traditions start with the arts. And that will run from November 10 through January 3rd. So any events you all are doing around winter holidays, be that Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, winter solstice events, New Year's Eve events, New Year's Day events, those are the kind of events we'll be looking for. So next slide. In addition to that, we also are continuing to publish our feature content. So this has become a bigger and bigger part of what we've been doing and what we're strategically looking to do in the future. We have a team of correspondents, feature writers, producers, videographers that work with us. And we publish a regular series of feature stories, podcasts, and video packages. All in total, we do anywhere from 6 to 8 of these each month combined, and they will often reinforce that seasonal messaging. So, around the winter holidays, they'll, in addition to events, we'll be also pushing a lot of this feature content, but not 100% of it. So there can be stories that are covered that fall outside the realm of whatever that seasonal messaging campaign may be. But obviously, we're going to want to reinforce that through the storytelling as well as the direct event marketing. So just to have you all aware that this is still something that we're very active with, and as we move into the future, there's something we're going to be even more invested in. So next slide for me, please. There. Thank you. The big question, of course, will be, how do I get my content featured? And you can visit this website here, which I'll also drop in the chat. This is how you can find out how to get featured, what you do to let us know what you're doing. So next slide for me. Terrific. When we talk about the website, for those, I see a lot of familiar names on the attendee list and some new ones. We've been talking about redesigning this website for a really long time. And we had done a lot of work with this network, with the JAM network, to come up with some content objectives and a plan, very strategic plan about what this new site would be. And that was all done. And we were just getting ready to move into the production phase when COVID hit. I remember being in regional in-person JAM meetings back in February of 2020, talking about how we were just getting the RFP was going out. We were ready to get into production. And of course, COVID threw all that kind of for a loop. But we are back to work. We do have a development firm that we're working with, and this is under construction as we speak. For those who this may be new to, the content objective. So when we approached this, we didn't approach it as redesigning the old legacy website as much as, if it were a new site, what would it do? And it will feature, the hero content will be these editorial features that we're doing, and supplemented with these seasonal messaging campaigns. There will be a robust arts directory, so organizations will be able to find you. As Erica pointed out, you may have been there a long time, but there are new people who may not even know that you're right around the corner. So they'll be able to search and find you pretty easily, and then of course get all the information about what you're doing through an easy link. We will also be coming back and offering what was very popular pre-COVID, which were the event discounts. So we have about 50,000 folks who have registered accounts with jerseyarts.com. They get access to the discounts that you're offer. So if you're thinking about, well, I want to make sure my events are on jerseyarts.com, you can always pitch them for the editorial features and pitch them for the seasonal messaging campaigns. But when the new site launches, you will be able to guarantee they're there just by offering, discounts to the folks who use the website. What the site will not have that the old legacy site had, which was a kind of universal event listing. So everybody could just put everything they're doing into the website. What we found is, one, that was a lot of work for you all, and you all expressed real interest in not doing that anymore. And we found that the consumers it was just forest through the trees. It was so much content, and it was really a bar we were no longer able to reach. So we didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver to the consumers. So that will not be part of the new site. That's being replaced by, again, a much more robust arts directory and focusing events around these campaigns and the discounting. We will also be bringing back our special event marketing. What we mean by that is we used to do these things we used to call them member nights or Jersey Arts member parties, where folks who had accounts with us were invited to come to a night at, let's say, the State Theater, and I'll pick on State Theater because Howard's here. And then we would do an enrichment component around the event and have a little reception for those folks and make it kind of a special night out. So again, that's very much in keeping with that, making it an experience rather than just, the event itself. And we will be bringing that back as well as some other kind of promotional marketing events we used to do. We had done diner theater, which were pop-up theater events in diners, which was very New Jersey. We do want to bring that back again, and some things like that. So that'll be a big part of the website as well, as we will be focusing more also on our destination marketing. So these are things that we've done where we take the cultural assets of a town and package it with restaurants, hotels, shopping, and market it as such. And there's a series of destinations that we've been working with that have traditionally been really primarily focused on summer, but this will be more evergreen content in the new site. So this is a big thing that we're working on. We'll keep you up to date as we get closer to understanding a launch date and some pre-launch work that we'll do, but certainly wanted you all to be aware that this is definitely something that we're looking forward to rolling out. Next slide for me, Eric. So Eric talked a lot about data. So this is a great time to talk about AIM. For those who are not aware of AIM, it's a project that we do with TRG Arts through support from the State Arts Council. And this is a collective audience patron database. So in essence, you take your segmented data and you pull it together with the data of all the other participating organizations. And then what TRG does with that big data is bounce it off of other third-party database sites to refer back a lot of additional information about the patrons you may not know. Demographic, psychographic data, which is really valuable if you want to have a better understanding of who your patrons are, which is really important across organizations. So yes, this will let you effectively market to your existing patrons much better. If you wish to be involved in list trading, and that's an option, not a requirement, but you can make certain segments of your lists available to trade and trade within the community. And you're able to do that based on lookalike audiences or target audiences on certain types of events. It's much more strategic than just blind list trade. So it's a much more effective way to do that. From your development efforts, you can better identify potential donors from your existing audience pools because you know much more about them, income ranges, things of that sort. If you're actively involved in EDI efforts and you're talking about benchmarking your existing audiences, this is a great way to do it because you're getting real demographic data back on who your audiences are. And then you can look at that data, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road and see if the efforts that you're doing are indeed showing any results. Next slide for me, please. It's a great myth busting tool. So we've seen organizations actually tweak their programming a little bit based on who their audiences are, based on who they thought they were. So that's a nice little tool to have as well. We've also seen it used once or twice as an offsite disaster recovery backup of your patron database. Should your CRM just totally crash and flake on you, you know that you have a recovery database there. And of course, we look at this data from the 30,000-foot view aggregate data to support our local, statewide, national research and advocacy efforts. So AIM is a great tool. Next slide for me, please. It's timely because it runs on a subscription year of February 1 through January 31 the following year. Got about, I think it's 44 organizations participating in 2022's AIM project. And that has contributed to a collective database of a little over 1.5 million unique households. So it's a pretty big database. We think it can grow and be even more powerful. And the new subscription window, so your opportunity to jump into the 2023 database, will open on November 14th and run through the middle of January, January 18th. So that there are important dates to know. And again, you can get information on all this at the website of artpridej.org/AIM, which I'll drop that into the chat as well. We had been discounting this at 50% off for the past 2 years. We have not set our pricing yet for 2023, but I can tell you it will be the same or extremely similar to what the pricing is now. We're not looking to double or reinstate those old pricings back because we understand that's just not at a place where we're at. So next slide for me. We have 2 upcoming events, both virtual. We have our annual meeting coming up for ArtPride on Tuesday, November 1st, with our keynote speaker, Kim Barrios-Lynn, and the next JAM webinar, which will be on November 9th from 10 a.m. to 11. I know the JAM leadership team is fine-tuning the content for that. So right now it's a save the date, but definitely have that date in mind as well. If you like today, make sure you come back in November and you can get data and be able to register for these things at artpridej.org/events. So I'll pause real quick to see if there are any questions about any of this. I know I'm going a little fast, but I see we're right up against time and I want to keep us on schedule. Howard, are there any questions coming in?
No questions.
I must be doing an amazing job explaining it. So with that, if this is the final slide for me, I just want to thank Eric for joining us today from TRG. It was a lot of incredible information. So thank you so much for being with us. I want to thank Howard for facilitating today and for all the work he does with the other members of the JAM team. And of course, thank you for staying with us here for the past hour. And I hope you found the information helpful. There should be a quick survey popping up as you leave the webinar, and let us know if this has been helpful. And I certainly look forward to seeing you all soon. So thank you so much.